Right, so let me start. So welcome everybody to the Bible study for the Contextual Christian Church. As we're going to go in to read, I'm going to have Charles. I'll go ahead and pray us in, and then Charles will start with the summary, and then it'll either be me and Thomas first reading. So go ahead and bow your heads, and I'll start the prayer. Father, we give thanks for every day that you've given us, for every second that's not promised. We pray as we go forward in this meeting, in this time of studying your word, that everything be simple to us, that we're able to understand every single second of what we're reading, every moment that's being said, as though we don't want to add nothing, but at the same time, we also don't want to take away from what's being read. So we pray that the things that may be hard for some are simple and easy for us to understand. In your son's holy and precious name, Jesus Christ Yeshua, amen.
All right. Amen. So in our study, we had the focal point of what we was talking about, the main characters, what we were talking about with yesterday's study. We have three people, Boaz, a man, Naomi. Boaz is some form of a relative to Naomi, and Ruth. Naomi and Ruth are widows, just to add that into it. Naomi lost her husband. Ruth lost her husband, and Ruth's husband is actually Naomi's son. So they're in a point right now where they're Ruth is working, and Boaz sees her Ruth working and
Wait, I gotta
acknowledges her
pause you.
character.
I gotta pause. You only pointed out that Ruth's husband is Naomi's son, but what happened to him?
Already brought up that he died. They're widows.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the widow part. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, you're good. Thomas, did you hear the widow part? It might have cut off.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, yeah, they're widows. But now we're in the area. Well, Ruth and Naomi are in a particular area. Boaz, likes the fact that Ruth is out there working and doing the things, doing the things she has to do. Congratulates her and lets her know, hey, look, go ahead and work with my maidens. You can still collect off the field after my men have worked. After they work, collect off the field, grab whatever you need to grab. Boaz has sought grace in Ruth. Naomi's happy that, oh, okay, you went out, you worked, you brought some stuff back. Who helped you out with this? Oh, Boaz, the guy that I think was related to my husband. Oh, okay, yeah. That's perfect. Now, not me. Matt brought up that this might be part of Naomi's plan because Naomi's a little bit on the old side, but Naomi's plan for Ruth to get another husband may be, hey, you're out there working, you can get another husband with the young men in the fields, or you could get married to Boaz or whatever it may be. But that's where we're at right now with our or that's where we left off with at the end of chapter 2 with Ruth.
All right, Thomas, anything you would add or say for the summary?
No.
All right, one correction I would add, Charles. If you're gonna bring up the possibility about it being Naomi's plan to get a husband for Ruth and for her to stay there, you gotta bring up the other possibility that it could be because he's blessed her and everything. And it's like, well, don't go nowhere else. This is where everything's going well. Remember, it's okay to bring up the possibilities, but keep this in mind. If you only bring up one possibility, even if you say possibility, what does that lead to people's minds thinking? Charles?
Some people just can you hear me?
Yeah.
Some people probably just take it for what it is, and then others will be like, well, wouldn't there be other possibilities? Some would ask the question, is there other possibilities if you just brought it up?
Exactly. But that's where the problem comes in. Remember, when we're giving our summaries and we're giving our explanations, we have to consider the possibility of a 5-year-old might be listening. And that's not to say I haven't made mistakes too, because I've said the SE word. I'm not going to say it, but we shouldn't be talking like that in case there's children listening. So with that being said, or intimacy, the word for intimacy. So we have to think about all possible that might be here. So if you're going to bring up only one possibility and then say possibility, it leaves it in its mind that that's the most likely, that is the answer. You see what I'm saying?
But I brought up two. I didn't even bring up that one. You would have brought up a third one. I brought up two possibilities.
You only brought up one possibility.
I brought up two. I brought up her potentially working and marrying one of the young men, or Boaz
Yeah,
marrying her.
that's the same possibility of finding a husband. That's the same possibility.
Oh,
That's
you
one
put her you
possibility.
you put it under the same possibility. Okay.
Yeah, because whether marrying doesn't matter which one she marries, if the whole goal is like, well, you could marry somebody, it's the same possibility. You can find a husband working there because you're either there's Boaz and then there's the men that work under Boaz. So
Mm.
that's the same possibility as the possibility of finding a husband. So, and with the same point, the fact that you only brought up marriage related possibilities, if a 5-year-old is listening or someone who hasn't built up the attention span yet, what'll end up happening a lot of times, and this happens with relationships too. If you say you can say possibilities all you want, but if you only bring up one possibility in your example when you say examples, people assume that that's what you're saying is the fact and not just a possibility. It's kind of like if I was dealing with a woman and we were having an argument over whether or not she was lying or being honest, and I said, well, there's a possibility that you are lying, and there's also a possibility that you were just incorrect. If I only bring up, well, I mean, there's a possibility you're lying, what does it sound like I'm saying? Am I really sounding like I'm saying it's only a possibility, or am I sounding like an accusation?
Oh, the accusation.
You see? So if you're it's okay to bring up the possibility examples, but you have to bring up different kinds of the possibilities and what's actually possible. Otherwise, it sounds like you've selected your answer. That's how it comes across to people. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. I see what you're saying.
And Thomas, were you able to hear that? I know sometimes your connection's not all the way there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So now that we got that, that was the only correction. Other than that, that was good. Yeah. You said every part and you didn't go too much into detail of the other parts that were extra unnecessary. So go ahead, Thomas, if you have are you able to read?
Yeah, yeah, real quick.
All right, go ahead and read the first five of Ruth. And remember to give 10 seconds for people because you're the first
Gotcha,
and
gotcha.
let everybody know where we're reading.
Of course.
Oh, you got to tell everybody where we're reading so they
Okay,
can
so
look
we're
it
on
up.
Ruth 3, verse 1.
Okay.
All right, guys. Then Naomi and her mother-in-law said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of kindred of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth with barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy remnant upon thee, and get thee down, sorry about that, and get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known unto thy man, until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me, I will do. Okay, so pretty much it looks like uh, Naomi's coming up with a plan for Ruth. She's not as involved physically, but she's the brains behind the operation current. And her plan is to pretty much have Ruth, after her little harvest or whatever, get together. Sorry about that. After her harvest, go and get freshened up and stuff like that, etc. And kind of keep eye on Moaz and just see and assess what he does and where he lays. And whenever he's done eating and drinking, to go and to lay by his feet, pretty much in a sense, and to see what his will is with her. So, long story short, Naomi feels like Boaz is a good candidate for Ruth, and they would do well nicely. That's what I got from that.
Is there any lesson that you could take from that for today for people?
Ooh, it failed. So jumping. I don't know, man. What do you think?
Wait, say that. I didn't hear you correctly. Say that one more time.
I said play the field.
Close, but not quite. But you're right on the edge again. Like you almost have the right answer, but you're not quite there. Charles,
It'd be like
what's
that
the lesson?
sometimes.
You said what?
I said it'd be like that sometimes.
Oh yeah, you've only had like once or twice that you were completely off. Every other time when you get there, you're like right on the edge, but you're not right there. Charles, go ahead.
This will be in my notes as an example of a woman, good or bad. Well, in this situation, good, but good or bad. Bible example of a woman group or a older woman grooming a younger woman on getting a mate, telling her what to do and how to do, basically giving her game on what to do to get Boaz, which is interesting because I didn't think I would see that in the Bible. This is something that a lot of other women could probably read this chapter and be like, "Oh man, hey, this is how they was." Okay, cool, cool. We're gonna have to go about getting a husband and a mate what we want about it in a new age way, but and still we can put a biblical sense to it. You get where I'm coming from?
Yes, and just like Thomas, you're right on the edge, but not quite. You're
Okay.
both correct in the lessons that you said, but it goes deeper in the same reference frame. And here's why. Naomi's not just telling her how to deal with them, not just giving her advice. She's making a plan for her to work to actually go in. See, Charles, on your side and why it's not fully there. Women training up younger women, does that mean that they're giving them advice on how to pursue a man and what and like giving them specific details necessarily?
It just depends on who. I've had my family
Exactly.
members, it
So
just
you're right
depends on
on
who.
the, and that's why you're right on the edge. Yes, technically it is schooling the younger generation, but it's more specific. And then Thomas, on your side, yes, there is a lesson in here showing that when you're available, play the field. That is true too. But to combine it together, it really boils down into one specific lesson that combines both of yours together. If you are single, especially for a woman, why would, and I'll answer after I ask a question. Thomas, why would they have her why would Naomi have Ruth wait until after he's eaten and drinking and laid down and then take off his shoes and
Because
lay him on the floor?
I personally feel like, when a person is has settled down, they're more
You
susceptible to
sound far
being.
away and echoey.
Sorry, I'm picking up food right now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
I got it on a headset. It's about as good as it's gonna get.
Okay.
Can you hear me though?
Yeah, it's just a little echoey.
Yeah, I can't help that. Sorry.
You're good.
But I feel like when people aren't in a sense laxy daisy after a good meal and drink and stuff like that, they're more attentive and alert and stuff like that in a sense, and they're not as susceptible to when a person has settled down and he's in this resting state. And that's why I feel like she wanted Ruth the way to after, as I said before.
Sounds good, but no. Now you were actually way off. But good try. Charles, why would she tell her to wait till after? Why would Naomi tell Ruth to wait till after he's done eating and drinking and laying down and to take off his shoes and lay by the floor? Charles, check your phone.
How about now? Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah, that's weird. I was gonna say after before we go to bed, we get comfortable. We also get vulnerable before bed. So I'm thinking about it from that perspective. The comfortable and
No,
then vulnerable.
no, because the vulnerability doesn't matter if he's already asleep. So why take off the shoes is the question then. That doesn't answer for that. And you said basically the same thing that Thomas said.
Uh,
So just a little different. So the reason it matters why Naomi told Ruth to wait till after he's ate and drank and to lay down on his bed and take off his shoes and fall and lay on the floor is he would be asleep at this time. And by taking off his shoes, you're doing something for him and showing that you're going to be here for him. So, in other words, through her actions, she is showing interest by helping out the man in a way that he would desire of her. A good example of this today would be if a woman saw Charles and she saw that you were at the barber getting a haircut and she paid for your haircut and then left her phone number for you. That would be a similar thing. Because the reason you're taking off the shoes, he was so tired, or he would be so tired, he didn't even have the energy to take off his shoes. He just laid on his bed and fell out. That's the concept going on here. And to top it off, what that also goes to show is a cultural thing. This is such a known thing of men to be so tired to just fall out that she could plan for it. That's how hardworking the men were then. So, what this lesson is and what it's showing is when a woman wants a man, you show him and you get his interest by finding out what he needs and not just making yourself available, but actually going out of your way to be involved and take care of his need to show your interest. That is the lesson here. So, Thomas, do you play video games?
I don't know if
Tom,
you can hear me. It's super loud in the background. But yeah, I do.
yeah. All right. So, a good way that a woman could do a similar thing as Ruth is for Boaz, a woman for you today, she's not into video games. But let's say you're into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is, I don't know if it's still big right now, but Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So, she specifically learns how to play Call of Duty Warfare 2 because she knows you're interested in it. And so it's something she could connect to what you want or desire or need. And mind you, this lesson doesn't just go for the women. This lesson is for both, actually. If you want to show somebody that you want to be with them, if you want to do something, you need, if as a godly man or whatever, you need to take interest in what's going on in their life and what they need or what they're into. That is a good godly way to show them. Oh, go ahead, Charles.
that was Thomas.
Oh, Thomas. Go ahead, Thomas.
So that was a good example.
Exactly. And that's something we've lost today. Today, when we're interested in somebody, what do? Charles? And I'm not talking about you and me specifically, but people in general.
Oh, I was about to say. Well, people in general just, they're in their own world. A lot of people are in their own world. They don't really get to understand the other person that they are attracted to or the other person they want to be around. They don't get to understand the things in their world. Just there. in that other person's world, just their own, with the social medias, with you know, the hypocrisy and all the stuff going on the media and all of that, TV,
Exactly.
you name it.
Exactly. So when they're interested in somebody, they don't actually take the time to get to know them at all. They just do whatever they want to do. If I invite a girl out on a date, how am I supposed to know what date to pick if I don't know what kind of person she is? Now, I may pick correctly, and she may want me to just be a type of person that just makes the decisions and chooses. But even when I'm making my decision, I need to think about who she is or what kind of person she is. And how can you do that if you literally talk for a quick second and then you don't find out anything? Oh, baby girl, you looking good today. I saw you over here from across the room and you know I had to come and talk to you. So let me, what you up for? What you want to go ahead and do in the next week? That's it? You don't know nothing about her. And this also goes into another lesson. And the other lesson is it matters where you meet who you meet. Are you sitting here meeting your girl at the club? You think that that's going to be a good partner? Are you sitting here meeting your girl over at a bar and thinking that's going to be a good partner? Are you sitting here thinking that you're going to meet her over at a hookah lounge and you think that's going to be a good partner? Keep in mind that where you meet somebody can make a difference of an easy red flag as to whether or not. What if I met somebody and I met her at the grocery store, but I see the way she dressed and she dressed like she a prostitute? Now, does that mean that she's a prostitute, Charles?
No, just me, just how she decided to dress in her presentation
Exactly.
when she decided to come outside. That means something.
Exactly. So it doesn't necessarily mean she's a prostitute, but what does it mean, Thomas?
They see a walking advertisement.
Basically, yeah, it means that she's not concerned and doesn't have respect for herself or for whoever she's with. Because it's not even just about the advertisement, although that is true. But what if she has a man? She's sitting here looking like as if she don't. And what if her man is a Christian man? She's looking like she definitely don't follow God. And this goes into a mindset mentality. When you're going to meet the person that you want to be with or are going to be with, keep in mind how they're dressed, how they behave, how they talk, and where you are when you're meeting them. Because all of that plays a part. Boaz was the one who owned the field. And not only owned the field, but how did he meet Ruth? He met her when he went to go out to check in everything. He wasn't a manager who was just sitting inside his house getting fat and rich off everything. He was involved. And where did he meet Naomi? I mean, Naomi's daughter, Ruth. He met her. She was in the middle of working in the field. So how do you think that comes across to her? I mean, to Boaz, Charles, seeing Naomi and how he met her.
Well, hard working, you know, and that's what he like. That's what he liked to see, as we talked about the last chapter.
Exactly. And with that being said, keep this in mind too. This is a lesson for women specifically more so than men, but it does work for both. Don't wait for somebody else to make the first move. If you're trying to get married and there's someone of potential, and this is what I've said before, and Charles, I've told you this before, and Thomas, this will be the first time you hear this phrase, or the second time, but I'm gonna say it. You'll hear it a lot over time. The only answer that a person can give you in a request is yes or no. Now, they could be rude, they could be polite or whatever, but all they can say is yes or no. But if you don't ask, then you make the answer no. So if you're interested in someone and you want to see if there's somewhere it could go, make your request known, make your desire known. And the last thing I'm going to say, and that's the last thing I'm going to say, because I don't want to go too much off of a tangent, don't want to keep it focused, but that's the lessons of this section. Don't sit here and think just because you're lesser of a position like Ruth is, don't sit here and wait for things to come to you. And work with the next generation, especially for women if they're trying to get a man. If they want that, you got to work for the things you want. Don't just expect them to show up, because even though you hope and someday they will, maybe, that's not normally how things work. You have to go after the things you want, even if it's a marriage. And even if you don't know what the answer will be. All right, let me go ahead and switch this background to the next section. And then, Charles, you can go ahead and read the next section.
All right. Verse 6. And she went down unto the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. Yeah, bade. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself. And behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thy handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter. My daughter, but thou hast shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. Not again, not again. No, why do they have to? It's a good lesson to learn, but man, they make it cringe. So Ruth did exactly what Naomi told her to do. Boaz catches her. Who are you? Oh, Ruth, what are you doing? What? You took the shoes off the what? Dang, you so kind, you so cool, Ruth. Man, I appreciate you, Ruth. My daughter. This goes back to what Matt was talking about in his lesson from the first five of the woman doing those things that Naomi told her and Boaz seeing that. And what Boaz did was he didn't turn his cheek and say, oh, okay. He didn't turn around and say, oh man, I was dreaming about Halle Berry. Let me go back to sleep. He acknowledged it, not congratulated, but thanked her. And, he was from what I'm taking it, he was pretty excited that she did what she did. And that's a good lesson for us. I don't know about you, Thomas or Matt, but there are times where women will do things for you, and it's good to at least just acknowledge it. Be like, oh man, thanks for doing that for me, even though you don't really know me like that, or oh, thanks for handling that for me. I appreciate it. I know Matt will tell you, I spent a good decade just women do things for me and I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm back in my own world. It just depends on what it is and what I got going on. I've had women buy me an Xbox before and I'm just like, oh, okay. My mind is so focused on other things where I'm just nonchalant about someone buying a full $100 Xbox for me. We should acknowledge those things, and we should reciprocate too, and at least show some form of interest and so show some form of excitement, considering she went out of her way to do this particular thing for, let's say, you, Thomas, or for Matt. Because what
But
other women are doing it?
what did she do also? Like what is everything like you haven't said what she actually did. You haven't explained that.
Went to the
I do have a
floor.
question. I'm curious about the mic. It's not friends on here.
Well, I brought up the whole taking the I brought up taking the shoes off the feet, so uncovering the feet.
That ain't the biggest thing she did here. That's not even close to the biggest thing.
Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handsmaid.
Think
For
about the
thou art
physical
a mere.
action of what would happen by doing that. You understand what she's asking him or telling
Take his
him?
clothes off,
No. The skirt of thy handmaid.
which she is now.
Yeah, spread forth the skirt of the handmaid. The handmaid's skirt, not his. Her skirt.
Take her clothes off.
In other words, what? Because you haven't
Oh,
explained that
intimacy.
part.
Oh, the intimacy part. Take her
There
clothes
you
off.
go.
Yeah, yeah. Take her clothes
But
off for
what
the
comes
intimacy.
along with intimacy as being a man and woman of God? What's
Well,
required?
oh, they have to be married.
There you go.
Oh,
You
that's what you
don't get
wanted me to bring up,
you
the
don't
marriage
get the
part.
context of that from the way it's described unless you know for the requirements. This is something that you'd have to have the other readings to know. She's asking him, and remember, as he explained, he's an older man. He's not the younger man. He's the
Hmm.
older man. And she's asking him for her to become his wife and for him to lay with her intimately, not just taking off his shoes, which is the part you brought up.
Which is the part I brought up.
It's a lot deeper than just taking off the shoes. She's asking for him to have intimacy with her, which would
Hmm.
require marriage. So she's asking for him to be her man.
Which, from the looks of it, it looks like they about to, get intimate before and then to do the marriage right after. That's what it.
Well, we don't know yet.
That's a possibility, at least.
Exactly. Remember, if it's a possibility, we gotta say it's possibility.
Yeah, the possibility of them getting intimate, then getting married, or just not getting intimate at all, and then getting married, and then come back and coming back to this.
Well, because remember what we read before. Is it a sin? And well, actually, I'll ask this after Thomas. You ask your question. What was your question, Thomas?
Sorry, guys, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm in a bar right now. I'm just curious about the when he
I did
said,
not
"Yep,
understand you at all.
yeah, he disregard my phone."
It was just about your what?
I was asking about the my daughter part. Is he like phrase on in there, or is that just like fucking exchange? Because the eighth grade.
Oh, the my daughter part. So my daughter is a turn of phrase for a young woman when you're an older man.
Okay,
It's
so
a
age
respectful
variance.
term. It's like young
Gotcha.
lady,
Okay.
not
Thank you
literally
for
my
clearing that up.
daughter.
Thank you for
Like
clearing that
even
up.
they do the same thing with a young man. It's like saying my son, but you're not literally calling him your son.
Right. Because I was thinking in a sense like that's also like a friend zone thing type of situation.
Not necessarily. It could be a sign of respect. It's like for a younger person. Like
Right. So age variance.
exactly. So when he says my daughter, he's just calling her in a respectful way of she's way younger than him.
All right. Just trying to get the grasp on this whole Tuesday situation.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's my bad for not explaining that.
I was
Yeah,
like, hold up, what's going on?
exactly. Now there's one question that Charles and I have read, and Thomas, I don't know if you've read. Is it a sin to have sex before marriage?
No signs, yeah.
You said what?
Yeah, no signs in general,
Actually, biblically speaking, it's not.
Oh, really?
If you, yeah, Charles and I had read before in the Old Testament and New Testament, if you marry the person that you had sex with before marriage, you are not in adultery or fornication of that.
Yeah, because
You remember when we read that, Charles?
Deuteronomy.
Yep. In Deuteronomy, it talked about it. It said that if they had sex, they were required to marry. It wasn't an option. So but that's where it comes in. If you don't marry the person, you commit adultery. But if you marry the person, it's God ordained to be together. So in that essence, can you commit adultery against your husband or wife if you have sex with your husband or wife? No. This is something that people teach because they look at it as wrong. But biblically speaking, that's not actually accurate. Just like we read in Deuteronomy also, or Leviticus or something, where it said if they once they had taken over in an area, if there was a slave or a woman of another nation that they had taken in as a woman servant and they wanted to marry her, they were required to live with her for a month before they got together and make sure that they're actually compatible. But what would people say, mostly who are claimed Christian today, if a man and woman were living together and not married?
What
Thomas,
they say it's the Thomas.
I don't know. I don't know.
most people say it's a sin if for a man and woman to live together and they're not married. But according to what's actually in the Old Testament, it was a requirement when they were a servant, they came from another nation. It was a requirement that they live together for a month and make sure that they're compatible. And if they weren't compatible, then the woman would no longer be a servant, but she would be considered a free woman to live there. But he was required to live with her for a month to make sure they're compatible first. So, what people think is a sin, according to the Bible itself, is actually not. But it's because people feel like it's wrong. That's why they call it a sin. So, back to this point, she's asking him basically to take her in as his wife and to be intimate with her, which again goes to show us what I said. A woman doesn't need to wait for the man to make the first move. If a woman wants something, go for it. And it also goes to something we've said before as well. Everyone looks at women as if they're less than men, as if they were treated as dogs. Here, has she been treated as a dog, Charles?
No.
No. As a matter of fact, she's been treated very well. But but I thought that women were second class citizens. There's a big difference when you do the research, when you have godly men. And I specify that because they were sometimes treated like dogs, but it depends on the culture. When you have godly men and you look at that and how they treated women, women were treated as equal. They were not treated as less than. There were certain jobs they weren't allowed to have, but it wasn't because of them being less than. It was because of the consequences and preventing problems. Because women, like Eve, was deceived in the sin of eating the fruit, whereas Adam knew what he was doing. All right, now for the last section. All right. Now in verse 11, we start off with Boaz. He starts responding to her, continuing. After he just told her, thank you. And I appreciate the fact that you went after me instead of one of these young men you could have gone after. Now, verse 11. And now, my daughter, Fear not, I will do to thee all that thou request. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman that is nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of the kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down unto the morning. And she laid at his feet until the morning. And she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. Also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her. And she went into went into the city. And when she came in to her mother-in-law, she said, who art thou, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. And said she, sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. So, this is what kind of man he is. Boaz is sitting telling her that, look, I appreciate the fact that you went after me instead of one of these young men. But I know that there is someone that is more closer to you, that is better for you in closeness than I am. But as I said, I'll do it for you, but I want to try to get you someone better for you. But if he will not, then I will. So in other words, he told her, look, I'm cool with being your husband. I'll take care of you. You could be my wife. We could have the kids, whatever. I got you. But I think there's someone better for you that I know. And if he's willing to be your husband, then I think you'd be better off there. But I'm not going to leave you hanging. You've already shown me. And notice how he said it. The whole city knows she's a virtuous woman.
Right.
Keep that in mind for the women and for the men of today, but specifically for the women. You need to understand that the way that you are seen around town matters. Do
Presentation's
either
everything.
presentations, everything. Do either of you think he would have done as much if she had been a harlot? If she had been sleeping around? Or if she had
Not
been
even close.
spiteful?
He probably
Depending.
would have never. He probably would have never saw her because remember he met her in the field.
Exactly. So let's say she had never gone in the field or any of that, and she just snuck in his room anyways. She might have been put to death. There's some real risk with what she did. But he also, to avoid her getting shamed or anything, he told his servant, like, look, don't let nobody know there was a woman in here. Keep that between us. And what that goes to show also is that even though it's not a sin, presentation matters. It matters how you impact people. So when a woman is dressing like she's sleeping around, when she's not dressing modest, what does she look like to everybody? Oh, well, I'm doing this for me. No, you not. Because if you was, you would be dressing like that at home too. And I know dang well you don't dress like that at home when you chilling. You dress like that because you like the attention you get from it. So the reward of the attention is for you. But in order to get that reward of attention, you need to dress like that to get the attention, which means there has to be someone else whose attention you need to receive. So yes, there is some truth to the idea of you're dressing like that for yourself, but it's not for the dress of itself it's for the attention that you get from it. So yes, it's more true that you are dressing for others because it's just like working a job. Are you working a job for the company's sake? No, you're working the job for yourself. But in order to get the pay, you have to do what the job wants. So yes, you're still working for the job. Even though it's all about the reward you get in return, you still are doing it for the job's requirements or the job's what they want. So in the same token, when a woman dresses like that, she's lying if she says it's not for other people, because she won't get the attention and she won't get that desired look and everything and the feeling sexy if other people don't look at her sexy. If you had a woman, and this is a perfect experiment they could do, have a woman dress provocatively, go into a room full of men, and have all the men look at her like she's disgusting. I guarantee you she'd be uncomfortable, maybe even mad or wanting to leave. But she ain't gonna want to stay there. Why? Because the attention you're receiving is not the attention you wanted. So it's a lie to say that you're dressing for yourself, because if you was, it don't matter what they say, you'd still be happy with how you dressed. But the fact that they look at you disgusting makes you feel bad means that it wasn't for you. It was for the attention you'd receive from them. So he tells her that. He sets her up with that. And then what ends up happening? She does what he says, and she gets the stuff that he gives her to go to her mother-in-law, Naomi. And she goes there and shows her and tells her everything that happened and everything he gave her. And he gave it to her, but he said why he gave it to her. Now, Charles, why did he give it to her?
Let me go back. She went to the city. He gave her that. Oh, wait. Yeah, for her mother-in-law. What am I thinking?
No, not for her mother-in-law entirely. What did he say?
Bring the veil that thou hast upon thee and hold it.
I'll give you a hint. It's in verse 17.
Why did it go to a whole nother chapter? Gave he me, for he said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law.
So he didn't want her going home empty.
I just brought up the mother-in-law thing.
But it's not about the mother-in-law. It says to not go home empty to the mother-in-law.
Make sure they have something.
Exactly. Now, why would it matter, Thomas, whether or not she goes home empty or not?
Because of the image that it leaves.
You said what?
Because of the image that it portrays.
No, that does matter, but that's not in this context. It doesn't work.
Oh, okay. Let me rebuttal. So it's like kind of his peace offering in the sense, like, hey, I get what you're doing, but I'm not the guy, but here's this for your effort.
Again, close, but not with the context. Charles, go ahead. One more try.
Can, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking one possibility to make sure they don't go hungry. Another possibility to make it look like she went, like she left the field, like she left working and went home rather than leaving a
Same thing
leaving the
Thomas
man's
just
bed.
said. Doesn't work with the
Oh,
context.
so no,
When he said, because he says
because
because that's a reason, is what it says. When in 17, and she said, "These 6 measures of barley gave he me for." Now, what does the word "for" mean?
because
Because. So what we're saying next is not a continuation of the process. It's the reason why. So the reason why is because he didn't want her going home empty. But nowhere does it bring up about it being because she's sitting here and it's for an image. So when we look at it, if you were to go talk to a woman that you wanted to marry, Charles, and you came back and you were, let's say you were staying at your mom's at the time, and you were going to talk to this woman, and you came back and you didn't even have a phone number, you didn't have a handkerchief, you didn't have nothing of hers coming back. Does that seem like everything went well or unknown?
well unknown.
Now, what if you had came back and she had given you cookies to come back with? How would that seem?
Well, then she showed interest because I actually like cookies, homemade cookies.
Exactly. So the reason he had her not go home empty is it shows that she was successful in her endeavor. You see that?
I hear it, but so we have to take it as that instead of the possibility.
Well, no, no, I was about to. There's 2 possibilities I was about to go into, but do you see how that is one of the possibilities because of the context?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I can see it as a possibility.
Now, the reason why it's not just for the mother-in-law is because why would he give it to her right now? The mother-in-law had her sneak out and go there empty-handed. Why have her bring anything home? When we see it, so we know it can't be for the mother-in-law. It's not to feed the mother-in-law because it says to not go home empty. So we know the emptiness is the focal point of the reason because of the way it's phrased. So then the question becomes, why would it matter if she went home empty or not? Because if it was about feeding the her mom or going back to her mom with food for her to eat, then it would have said that, right?
Right.
It would have said it wouldn't have said don't go home empty. It would have said go home and this is to feed your mom. This is for your mother.
This is for Naomi. Make sure you get
This
them
is for
to Naomi.
Naomi. It would have said something for, like instead of saying in verse 17, for he said unto me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. It would have said, go uh, give this to thy mother-in-law. But it wouldn't have specified go not empty if it was about giving food to the mother-in-law, about feeding her and taking care of her. So we know that can't be the reason because of context. And then image wise, if it was about image and looking like she came from the field, then why did he say, then again, why did he specify go not empty? Why didn't he say go not empty for let it be as though thou had worked in my field, or something about bringing up the field, right? So we know it can't be about an image because of fact he didn't bring up the image. He talked about her not going empty. So it's specifically about the going home with nothing. Now,
And it sucks
what
that he
what
didn't bring up that, like you brought up the example about a woman giving me cookies, and I was like, oh yeah, that shows some form of interest because I like homemade. It didn't bring up something specific like that either. That's what sucks about it.
exactly? So, but that does, but it's not necessary in this case because what possible things would be impacted by her going home empty? By the fact of it being empty, what would impact? That's not going to impact her mother eating because she has food and stuff already from working in the fields. That's not going to impact the image because she came in secret. She could have left in secret and made it home just fine. Well, and it's not going to impact the image of working in the field because she's coming from the house. She's not coming from the field. So even still, that would not impact the image. So the only thing that the statement of go not home empty handed, the only thing that that impacts is what, Charles?
Oh, for the favor of showing favor, showing interest.
Exactly. I'll give you another example not related to relationship where the same thing would happen. If I had gone to a job interview and in this job interview, we went out to meet at just at a random office. It's not even at the main office. We went to eat at the random office. And then, and I'm going there to try to get a job. And I come home with a Subway sandwich because they didn't want me going home empty handed. They wanted me coming home at having something. So they got me a Subway, they got me lunch. What does that look like on the possibilities of that or how that could relate?
Oh, yeah, it's a real question. It looks like you got the
Yeah,
job because they went out of their way to get you a sandwich.
exactly. So the fact that it brings up not going home empty handed means you're trying to show through the food in this case, or the Subway in the other case, or cookies in your case, you're trying to show that it worked out. That's the image it's trying to show. So what was the original mission, Thomas, for Ruth? Thomas, you're muted. All right, Charles, go ahead. What was the original mission for Ruth?
For Ruth was to do what Naomi said and having that favor and trying to get him into a point where he's the one that shows the interest and he's the one that marries Ruth. Her mission
You could have just
was
said to get married,
to get married. Yeah.
to get a husband. That all you did like when you order McDonald's. You said everything not just to explain what you want. So yeah, the mission was to get a husband. So the fact that he made sure she went home with some evidence that it worked out, that's why the only actual option in this context is not for to feed the mother-in-law, but because it focuses on not going home empty, it's to show that it worked out. In other words, that she will have a husband soon, whether from the other guy or from Boaz. You see what I'm saying? Why that only has the one meaning?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, even though it didn't say that.
What do you mean?
Well, it we went through this breakdown of what it because it didn't actually specifically say that. We have to go through a breakdown of process elimination. That's what I meant.
Well, it did say it because of the process of elimination. It doesn't have to say
So what
word for word. The context still says it.
well, that's what I just said. It didn't say it specifically. We went through a process of elimination.
Charles, when you say it doesn't say that, that means that it's incorrect. Rephrase that because you just that threw me off.
Okay, so to not throw you off, it didn't specifically say those exact words. It did say it, just not in a specific way, to where we have to go through a process of elimination to get the right answer. It didn't just give us the answer, basically.
Okay. So what you meant is that it doesn't literally say it did it for this purpose, but the
That's what I said
context
just
shows
twice.
it.
Yeah, I said it twice in two different ways.
Yeah, but the first way you say it, like it doesn't say it, that means it's not in there. That's how people say that phrase. So that's why I had to have you rephrase it because of that. Like if I told you that I went to the store and the store doesn't say that it has ground beef, but there's ground beef in the store, and there's a sign in the store that says ground beef, it just literally doesn't say the words that the store has ground beef. By me saying it doesn't say it has ground beef, I'm telling you there's no ground beef. You see how that has a different meaning than what you intended?
I mean, I would have just went to another store, but yeah, I see what you mean.
But that's where the problem comes in because our job in summary and explanation is to make it simple for other people who are listening or may be on it later. So you
Oh, I
gotta make
understand
sure.
that part. I thought you had understood it from the first one, but I already re-explained it. So
Yeah, you already explained it, but I'm just giving a little correction for future reference. You got to make
yeah,
sure that what you're saying means what you're saying when the way that people would take it. Otherwise, it doesn't help at all. But you already re-explained, so we already understand. So it
yeah.
does say it, just not word for word. So, anyways, back to that. So now that we finished that section, this is a very good lesson though, because it doesn't say it word for word, though it says it in context. What is the lesson that can be taken from this, Charles?
Uh, in everything we read, or just what we just talked about.
What we talked about how it took that whole process to get the answer, but the answer was straightforward in it once we did.
Um, I mean, the only thing I'm thinking about is making sure you're getting the proper context, and if something seems off, you could do your own process of elimination to get the right answer.
Yeah, exactly. Don't just think because something is not literally stated word for word that that's not what's said there. Make sure that you do the process of elimination to understand what's actually being said when we read. This is what rightly dividing the word means in Second Timothy or First Timothy. I think it's the Second Timothy. Um, a lot of people read the Bible. There are people who have read the Bible 4 or 5 times over, but they get things wrong. Why is it that they get things wrong? Because in times like this, among other times, they don't take the extra step to do a process of elimination to see what actually is meant by what's being read. And this is why we have so many different churches and religions. It's not because the Bible is open to interpretation. There is no private interpretation. The Bible says that. So if we have two contradicting thoughts, either you're right or I'm right, or we're both wrong. So we have to keep that in mind. So that's the lesson from this whole exercise we had to do. There are a lot of times that the Bible's straightforward and it says word for word what it means. It's easy to understand. But in times like this, you need to make sure you do the extra legwork to see what it's actually saying and what's actually going on. Otherwise, you can have a whole different context. So yeah, that was the right answer, Charles. Don't just assume because it sounds a certain way, take it and run with it. Do the process of elimination when we're not 100% sure and see if there are more possibilities than we're thinking about. And if the possibilities we thought about, if they actually work, we need to do the extra legwork. Otherwise, we're not studying the Bible. We're just reading the Bible. And that's not the same thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And Thomas, you see what I'm saying?
Do your own due diligence.
Yeah, gotta do the due diligence. All right. So now that that's over, I'll go ahead and since I prayed us in, I'll have Charles go ahead and pray us out.
All right. Go ahead and bow your heads if you can. Oh, wait, did you want to do an outro?
I'm gonna do it after the prayer.
Okay, cool. Bow your heads if you
Yeah.
can. Father, thank you for giving us this book of Ruth. Thank you for giving us the story of Ruth and some of the things we can. This is a great. This is a different Bible study, which I prayed upon, and you gave it to us. So I appreciate that. These are some good lessons I can put into some good stories I can bring up with some of the women in my life if they're willing to hear it. Thank you for making sure that Thomas and Matt's on this as well, so they can keep their footnotes and uh, keep this in mind for future reference and for future times, separate from the Bible study. I pray that Thomas makes the money that he needs to make and everything's all swell. And I pray that Matt gets the miles that needs to get going forward. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
And thank you everybody who was able to be on, and to everyone who was able to is able to watch this video later on in the Bible study. And I pray that every one of you have a wonderful night. And Tom.